Hello and welcome to the Homes and Safe Communities Scrutiny Committee on the 9th of June 2021. May I remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hands up if they can be seen on screen, or use the raise hand function. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and/or to grab the attention of the chairman or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the chairman or Democratic Officer know. If they have a webcam, then they should try turning this off, as this will help with broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth so they can at least hear and be heard. Thank you. Okay, so agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Chair, I just have one so far from Mr. Anthony Raybould from the tenant representatives.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other apologies for absence that they've been asked to submit? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Nobody's raised their hand. So agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of May 2021. Are we happy to go with these in one, or would you like me to go through them page by page?
I move the minutes, Chair.
Okay.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Minutes moved and seconded. Number 3, to receive declarations of interest. Do we have any? No. Okay. So agenda item 4 is the digital inclusion. I believe Tony was going to lead on this presentation. There you go, Tony, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen with you. Get the slideshow running first of all. Okay. Can you now see that presentation?
Yes, I can see it.
I can see it, Tony.
Excellent. Okay, well, look, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and provide an update on what has been happening with digital inclusion work across the last 16 months. No need to say that it's been a very challenging time for the council, and that includes the work we've been doing to support our residents to develop digital skills and the access they need. The pandemic's changed the landscape in lots of different areas of our work, and as we hopefully move through what is a recovery phase, it actually seems to be like a really great time to look at what's needed to support our residents going forward. So I wanted to cover off a few areas this evening. I wanted to have a look at, remind ourselves what we want to achieve as a council, have a look at how the pandemic has impacted what was already a very complicated picture in terms of digital inclusion, look at some of the issues and the opportunities that have arisen over the past 16 months or so, and crucially then how we're trying to respond to the new situation to improve things for our residents. So as you will probably recall, the Council's digital strategy recognised the need to ensure that our residents had the skills and access to take advantage of opportunities that digital technology and services provide. The ability to address issues around social isolation, access to better deals on things like utilities and other financial products, access to employability, training and employment as well, and obviously accessing public services. And while the agenda in Wales and for the Vale of Glamorgan has moved on since we put our digital strategy together some years ago, to ensuring that services are designed to meet the needs of all of our users across all channels, and away from what was purely or largely a financially driven agenda. There's still a need for a focus on developing digital skills and access, so that our residents can take advantage of the opportunities that we mentioned previously. Excuse me. So the pandemic really has only served to emphasize the benefits of developing digital skills and having access to digital services. Many people want to take advantage of the flexibility options that digital technology provides in lots of different areas. And in fact, for many, including school children, some of our most vulnerable, access to digital services has become a necessity. Many have upgraded their skills and arranged access as a result, because they had to, rather than because they wanted to. For instance, to make sure that they could access food and medication at the beginning of the pandemic. But the pandemic has also, unfortunately, put an end to many of the services and activities that we were undertaking beforehand. So we weren't able to provide face-to-face training. Many of the lending schemes, so we lending digital devices for access, we weren't able to undertake because many of our services closed down and resources were diverted elsewhere to support the pandemic response. And as I mentioned before, response to the digital inclusion agenda has always been quite complicated, and actually the last year has added to that complexity. With a range of different organisations and actors all trying to offer opportunities. The Welsh Government have picked up some of the issues. Lots of council services are trying to address issues around digital inclusion, mentioned access, education, housing, regeneration and planning. We have third sector partners who are trying to address issues, and also private sector organisations. So recently, for instance, we've been in contact with a major network provider who are looking to support vulnerable people in our communities with discounted broadband access, for instance. And not only do we have lots of different actors in that space, lots of the projects overlap. So there are lots of opportunities to lend or provide digital equipment. We have, as I mentioned, projects looking at digital access and emerging training on digital skills. So very complicated, and that complexity has produced quite a few issues. So duplication of effort, diluting our impact. So the complexity creates a real risk of minimising the opportunities to address some of those real issues. We may end up with lots of focus on a particular group in our community, while others may miss out because that effort isn't focused. There's lots of competition for scarce resources and lack of coordination of effort. So, you know, we may have partners or even different council services bidding for the same funding streams, rather than working together and try to get the best out of the funding that's available. We have some services who have quite a high demand for lending digital devices, tablets and phones, etc., while other services have an excess of those available, and we don't match those together. And then in terms of human resources, we have some organisations who have lots of volunteers who want to be digital champions or you'll provide training, and then other projects are struggling for those resources. So a real complex picture, which is leading to real difficulties in actually evaluating which responses are really making a difference to our residents' day-to-day lives. So with all of those different activities going on with all of those different organisations, it's really difficult to pull all of that information together and finding out what works well for different groups of people with different issues, or who need support with different subject matter, for instance. And that also means that it's really difficult to identify and address some of the gaps in provision as well. So our response has really been focused on removing some of those barriers and taking advantage of the opportunities that are available to us. So I've talked about the Get the Veil online partnership in this committee previously. I think when I last presented an annual report, which would have been early last year before the pandemic, we said that one of the key things we needed to do was to get that group back together and refocused. And we've managed to do that now. We've had 4 or 5 meetings with the group. We've also, so for those of you who aren't aware, the partnership involves the council, third sector partners, residential social landlords, focused on addressing those kind of digital inclusion and associated issues. And it is a great way, when we can get it working, of ensuring that our resources are used to best effect and we reduce that kind of duplication of effort. We've changed the structure, so we now have a steering group whose responsibility is to provide direction and prioritise the issues. And then we have a delivery group or an operational group who actually deliver the work. And I think the other key thing for the steering group is to make sure that the work that is undertaken delivers reportable outcomes, so we know exactly what we're achieving and we can share that information, replicate what works really well, and then change what doesn't work so well or is unpopular. So we've also realised that there is a significant overlap in focus and the kind of target groups or communities for internal projects. So we have the Veil Heroes service, for instance, which was established at the beginning of the pandemic to support vulnerable residents to access food and medication. But as the pandemic has progressed and we start coming in again, hopefully to that recovery phase, we've realised that actually the type of support that's required might change. And so that service is looking at supporting residents with mental health issues, financial issues, employability issues, and of course digital inclusion plays a really big part in all of those areas, or can do at least. We had an Armed Forces Covenant group supporting veterans and their families across a very similar range of services, and digital inclusion was becoming an increasing focus for that service as well. And of course, many of those Armed Forces veterans in the Vale and their families fall into a number of other categories. So it might be older people, might be people in workplace poverty, or they might actually be unemployed. So there was a big overlap there. And then finally, of course, there was the digital inclusion group who were focused on primarily looking at increasing skills and access, but the purpose of increasing skills and access was to address many of those issues that the other two groups. So because of that big overlap in objectives and activity, we made the decision to merge the 3 projects together. We've only had 1 meeting so far, but the plan is to produce an action plan so that we can deliver outcomes that match all 3 groups' objectives, make the best use of the resources, and actually share information and experiences of addressing some of those issues, so we can all learn from each other. I think the other key thing is about by merging those activities, it allows us to take a holistic approach to resident issues. So rather than just dealing with the presented with issue, we can kind of dig a bit deeper and make sure that we can address all of those issues so that the customer has the best possible outcome from their interaction with the council. I've talked about a coordinated approach to funding applications so that we can make sure that as many people as possible benefit from the funding. And actually, with, as you will probably be aware, with lots of grants, that being able to do them in partnership on a regional basis often helps with actually getting access to those grants. We can focus our objectives, as I mentioned, and then critically looking at the annual reporting for digital inclusion, we can have improved recording and reporting of outcomes as a result of that coordinated approach. And of course, in terms of working out what works best, we need to develop some sort of customer insight. You know, what's important to our customers, what's valued by our customers and residents, and recording and reporting those outcomes will feed into that. But I just wanted to tell you about an exercise that's been happening, which our adult community learning team are involved in, funded by the Welsh Government, and they're going across a number of different councils, as you can see there. So it's a research project, and it's looking at how our residents use digital services, what sort of connectivity they have, what sort of skills they have, in order to identify some of those gaps. And then we'll use the feedback from that research work to try and develop objectives that are aligned with those gaps, and activities then that develop those objectives or deliver those objectives. So just finally, with regards to ongoing and planned activities, we're reviewing our digital strategy to make sure that it's still valid. In actual fact, officially it terminated at the end of last year, so it's only valid until 2020, so it needs to be reviewed. We are starting to relook as we come out of that lockdown, looking at digital device lending schemes again. We are working with Digital Communities Wales to deliver digital training, and in fact we've got a grant to access, I think it's 80 tablets, and working with Digital Communities Wales to deliver training for veterans on a kind of train-the-trainer type basis, working with veterans groups across the Vale and actually run the Cunning Taff as well. We're looking at how we bring digital inclusion support through Vale Heroes. We've already started to make the connection on the website, on the database, but we need to bring that into our call handling support as well. We've just procured a new digital platform to replace our existing CRM platform in the council, and it's a very modern platform. It will allow us to build very intuitive, easy to use and processes, and also give our customers and residents the ability to stay informed about progress, so they'll be able to track their own requests. And that will not only assist with online access to services, but actually on the telephony and face-to-face channels as well. And we are just starting to review how we're going to reintroduce face-to-face training for those communities who will benefit from that. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Okay, thank you for that, Tony. I have to admit, as I said to you on a previous occasion, and I seem to be saying a lot in these meetings, you and your team have done a wonderful job throughout all of this, throughout this whole COVID thing. You haven't been able to achieve everything you've wanted, but that is completely understandable. You've done so well, and I would love to pass on that recognition to your team and everybody else who's been involved in this. From what I've understood, we've had a fairly positive feedback in the past, and we haven't really had any major complaints or issues with this. So brilliant, well done. I think Heather has something she wants to say. So
please.
I'll mute myself and you go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, Tony. Heather
Hello
Smith. I run the Colquitt Community Centre. I'm the chair up there. And as you said, we've gone and got tabs and computers and everything to clear out with residents. We found a lot of residents, they had the tabs, but they didn't have any internet. So we've been trying to get internet put into the community centre. Well, what an ordeal. Nobody will put it in for me. BT, who else? We had Sky, Vodafone, we've tried them all. I tried the council, but they gave me an estimate, which was really above our means because we're only a kids club. I've just got in touch with Shani Penter, is it? And she's going to, I'm waiting for an estimate off her now. Is there any other way I can get it done?
Well, funny enough, we've been speaking to a broadband supplier, and although they were focused on residential properties, but they've got a range of different schemes available. And I think if there was a community benefit, they would certainly be prepared to listen to what we might need. So I can do some digging on that front, and see what we can come up with. The other thing that we're looking at doing is finding out all of the sources of tablet lending available across the
Well, we've got 4 to lend out. We've got 4 tabs already bought to lend out, and we've got 2 laptops for the kids to come do their homework in the community centre. But it's just getting the access.
It sounds great. So one of the other things we can look at potentially is getting SIM cards with data on there. So that's one of the other things we're looking at. So as long as you've got access to a mobile network, you would be able to get access to the internet as well. So I can look into that for you as well, Heather. And
all right, thank you.
If that's okay.
You'll have my number. You've got my telephone to be there somewhere. Somebody will give you my telephone number or a connection.
I will be able to get hold of you. Don't worry.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Heather. If you could mute yourself now.
All right, yes.
Yep, thank you. I've got 2 people wanting to speak. I'm going to go to Councillor Bird first and then Councillor Cave. So if you'd like to go ahead, Councillor Bird.
Yeah, just on that one, Heather. Tony has suggested a kind of 4G router would probably be your best way forward there. They're not that expensive now, and you can get large data bundles for relatively small amounts of money. So it wouldn't mean any physical connection. It would just mean purchase. And I'm sure Tony could get some advice to help you out on a 4G router.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much.
Definitely, we can investigate that.
Thank you.
Okay, is that all, Councillor Bird? Looks like
yes,
it.
It was. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Just wanted to double check before I brought Councillor Cave in.
Hello, can you hear me? Heather's raised a really interesting question here, hasn't she? And it does seem that she's done quite a lot of work already trying to find a solution. And I just wondered, it prompted me to think, do we have a digital needs hot desk line, which, you know, Heather maybe could have been directed to at the very beginning when she first came across this problem. I just think that might, you know, speed things up up for people.
So we can, sorry if I'm allowed to come in there, Chair. We have the Vale Heroes hotline is one that we can use. And as I'm saying that, I'm trying to remember the number off the top of my head and I can't remember it, but I'll get it for you. But certainly any either from individual residents or from organisations, they can contact that that service and they'll be able to kind of advance that for you. You may not have the answers straight away, but certainly advance the inquiry. And then we have an email address, which is digital@valeofglamorgan.gov.uk, and you could use that email address as well with any kind of queries or kind of requests can go through there as well.
Well, that's very interesting that you have an email address, a direct email address. But I just wonder how well we're promoting it, because that might be something, you know, that in the early days of Heather looking would have been a great place for her to have gone to.
Yeah, it's been mainly focused on internal developments right now, but certainly it's a service that we want to kind of offer going forward, and we are, that's part of the kind of review that we're doing with Get the Veil Online and the internal group about, you know, how do we coordinate all of that effort and put provision in place so that we can assess where the need is.
It's all very well, Tony, but having an email address, but if people are having connection problems or inclusion problems, they may not be able to email. I think telephone support would be beneficial for cases like this.
Yeah, so the Veil Heroes telephone line is the place for those people.
For me, yeah, sorry. Sorry, Jeff.
Okay, somebody needs to mute themselves. Heather, can you please mute? You're not muted.
I did mute and I disappeared. Right.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. For me, the main issue is that people have a one-stop shop to go to, and certainly us as councillors, we can, you know, if there was such a place or such a number, such an email address, you know, maybe when the work is finished, the research is finished, that we can help promote such a service.
Well, look, I can definitely take that request forward, and I can report back in terms of what that service is going to look like at a later date.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nugent-Finn, if you'd like to come in now.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tony, for the presentation. Yeah, it's great, very informative, and you know, I have to agree with what's been said with regards to it does need to be slightly more accessible. I'm just thinking what you've been saying and connecting all these things up. The people are going to be very familiar with this, but there was a very fantastic support group set up in the Vale of Glamorgan called the COVID-19 group, and it was predominantly run through Facebook, Tony. But I have to say they were extremely communicative right the way through, you know, from the first lockdown, and continue to be now. And they are a very good bunch of people, so I think it's really relevant that you kind of link up with them, Tony. Firstly, to thank them, obviously, which you may have, so apologies if I'm duplicating, but the communication has been spot on. They've been very impartial, non-biased. They just literally fill the gap where people need it, so they are terrific at signposting. So they do need some recognition, Tony. And yes, maybe you want to bring them on board with some of the future things, like you say, identifying gaps in provision with regards to tablets or IT, things that Heather was saying earlier on. These people are really at the sort of the groundwork of what's been achieved in the Vale of Glamorgan. So yes, recognition, and perhaps it's, you know, some linking up with them, Tony, wouldn't be of any harm to us as Vale of Glamorgan, and you know, yourself as C1V first point of contact, because they have been tremendous. I'm sure members will agree. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tony.
It sounds like a fantastic group, and definitely the sort of people we want to get engaged with as part of the overall effort. So we'll definitely do that.
Thank you, Councillor Nugent-Finn.
Thank you, Chair.
I will bring in Councillor Aviat now, but before I say that, Councillor Nugent-Finn, if you don't have anything else to say, can you please lower your hand? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say I'm very keen to set up a scheme in my area, kind of an intergenerational thing where people can either, when we're allowed, they can either go to the primary schools, or primary schools can go to the people's homes, just to show them, because the kids are just naturals, and you know, just to show people simple things, and like me, not to be afraid of new technology. That's something I'm hoping. I'm just wondering if Council would support this.
I think it's the kind of thing that could be worked out with the Vale Heroes. Really, it's the kind of, you know, that is the type of thing that Vale Heroes are doing, isn't it?
So if I can go in, that intergenerational work has proved really, really popular well, right across the UK actually, and it is something which we would definitely be interested in looking at, because it has so many other benefits outside of just the kind of digital training element, doesn't it? So yeah, absolutely, we would be interested in looking at that, and that's certainly something I could take back to both our internal group and the Get the Bill Online partnership.
Thank you for that, Tony. Does anybody else have any other questions or anything else they would like to say regarding this? Okay, I see no hands going up, but nothing in the chat. Okay, all I can say is thank you very much, Tony, for coming in and giving us that report today. I move that we note this presentation and we ask for a future update at some point. Okay. Is everybody happy with that? Okay. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
I'm going to go on to agenda item 5 now, which is the Shared Regulatory Services Business Plan. I believe Dave is leading on that. Are you, Dave?
Yes, Chair, I am on the call.
Thank you.
Hopefully my IT will let me show you a few slides and continue a conversation with you as well. Now, you just bear with me. I'm going to try and share my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see that. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, excellent. So Chair, what I'm going to just take you through are a few slides to set out the SRS business plan and the process behind it. I just begin with explaining to the committee what the SRS is about. It is a fully integrated service across 3 councils. It's the only one in Wales, and there are only 2 or 3 others in the whole of Wales, England and Scotland. It's one management structure, and you have me as the head of your service, and I'm the head of Cardiff service and the head of Bridgend service as well. And it was put together in 2015, essentially to make these environmental health, trading standards and licensing functions more robust, more sustainable, and actually a better service. You know, 3 heads are better than 1, maybe that type of concept came behind it. The business plan that you have in front of you, and on page 16 there's a slightly enhanced graphic to this, really sets out how we'll deliver the statutory requirements that are placed on all 3 councils, and how we're going to deliver the corporate aspirations of each council in terms of the professional disciplines, but also into wider things like safeguarding, like general well-being of the community and so on. Our priorities that we set out, and when we set them out in 2015, they were done with elected members, they were done with scrutiny members at the time. And the common goals we found were around improving health and well-being, protecting the environment, supporting the local economy and safeguarding the vulnerable. And underpinning all of that was to maximise the use of our resources, because in the last 7 years we've taken in excess of £2 million out of the budget that we had when we started. I still take a view that we are the best service in Wales, if not the best service in the country, and we've made those reductions very sensibly. In the plan that you have, section 6 of the plan expands upon these different priorities and targets, and there are a series of concentric circles that, again, we created with Scrutiny members to try and give you a feel for, are we actually improving health and well-being? Are we safeguarding the vulnerable? What are the activities that we undertake, and what does an improvement look like? What does that support look like? We're trying to get away from, just giving you bland performance measures that say we visited 100 shops, we spoke to 100 neighbours, and so on. That didn't mean much. So we've tried that, and I think it's standing the test of time. For me, as a head of service, if I was to judge the SRS about how well it's doing, I tend to use all these different P's, and I'm extremely proud of the people I work with, particularly over the last 15 months. Some of the things they've done in the coronavirus outbreak, some of the tasks we've asked them to do, some of the people they've had to engage with, they've been fantastic. And they really do deliver on that bottom one, can do, want to. I think we've performed well. We've provided all 3 councils with value for money. I think we're reasonably well regarded by the community, by elected members, and by our partners. And the key one, the positioning, is to continue to be relevant to elected members, and to make sure that we are able to help them do what they were elected to do, and in their local community. Our attendance levels are good. Our attendance levels are some of the best in the councils. Our performance against the established measures are continuing to improve, and those are set out for you in the plan again under each section, in section 6. And I keep talking about money, but we have delivered the savings, and we've actually delivered more than the councils asked for. What has been really positive by all 3 councils is that they've allowed me to create a reserve, and I've been able to retain some of those savings that we over recovered to invest back into the service. And again, I think that's pretty unique across councils in Wales. I just make a point about mobile working. So Tony's talked to you a lot about just now about the corporate strategies on ICT, and with Tony's help and with Nick Wheeler's help, our mobile working regime took to the coronavirus and the working at home really, really well. It was something we were doing already. We've learned a lot, and we've actually given Nick a challenge to help us improve on that. And right now I'm sat at home, but I'm talking to you through the Vale system. I can do exactly the same at Cardiff, and I can do the same at Bridgend, because we've built ourselves a good ICT system that's an integral part of each council. Our work keeps coming. I've touched on coronavirus. It has consumed the service for the last 12 to 15 months. It derailed it to an extent many of the other things that we do. But I'll just flag some of them that, the work keeps coming. We've got a cheerful little chap in the top right-hand picture. There is a rat. We are now seeing food businesses reopen, and we are challenging the hygiene issues in there. And generally, we get a lot of complaints about overgrown properties and like mice, rats. That continues to be a big issue for us. The top left is an unfortunate one of young people these days with NOS canisters and any and everything they can get their hands on to get a bit of a high. The bottom left is about animal welfare. Some of you will be aware that a certain gentleman who owns an awful lot of horses has been put in prison, and we've impounded 300 to 400 of his horses and are rehoming many of those now. I've touched on ICT, which is the bottom right. In terms of things that are happening going forward, air quality, we have huge challenges on not just high-rise buildings, but generally housing conditions altogether. Lots of public health legislation coming our way now, and there's my mention of money again. I finish with my guys, my people I work with, about the passion for their job. I've got two colleagues there, absolutely proud to be their head of service, really, really proud. Every time I set them a challenge, they deliver. And that's where I leave it, Chair, for now, is the passion that is in the SRS to deliver services for members. We don't get everything right. We upset an awful lot of people, and we have done in the last 12 to 15 months in trying to deliver the Welsh Government's controls on coronavirus. They changed on a weekly basis. And so the advice we gave would often come with a use-by date. But we do our best. We do our very best for the residents in the Vale and Bridgend and Cardiff, and hopefully we will continue to do that for many years to come. So our business plan sets out where we think we're going to go in the next 12 months. I say think because the virus is continuing to challenge us through the new Delta variant. And hopefully there are things in there that members can identify with. And I'm here just to get some views from members on what is in front of them.
Okay, thank you for that, Dave. Councillor Brooks, you have your hand up first, followed by Councillor Perks. So if you'd like to come in, Councillor Brooks.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's just a quick question, and obviously you've had a very challenging year, the same as everybody else. And it's good to see that actually you're starting to be able to visit premises and get that sort of normal roll back on track a little bit, because obviously you've been constrained, nothing you could do about it. It's a question really about how the joint scrutiny is going, because that was obviously when I was cabinet member, we actually started this with the joint regulatory services, and obviously it was still in its infancy at that stage and just trying to iron out lots of niggles. And I just wondered, years later now, is actually how that is going, the joint scrutiny meeting.
Yes, Councillor Brooks, we did embark on a journey, didn't we, back in 2013, I guess, and joint scrutiny continues to evade us, and so I continue to attend scrutiny committees at all three councils. There are 2 committees I attend in the Vale, 1 in Bridgend and 3 in Cardiff, and that I think reflects the broad scope of duties that we have. The nearest we got to joint scrutiny was where members attended from a Cardiff scrutiny from the Vale and Bridgend and submitted questions and the like. I mean, interestingly, when the Wales Audit Office looked at environmental health 2 years ago, I invited them to scrutinise the service, and they said, no, we're going to do it, and we're going to produce 3 reports, 1 for each council, because it was too difficult for them as well. So I don't think we ever arrived at joint scrutiny. So the business plan is with you this year. It went to Cardiff scrutiny last year. It'll go to Bridgend scrutiny next year, and that's where we are. It's in the too difficult box, seemingly.
Okay, never mind. Pass it'll stay in aspirations. Thank you for that.
Okay, Councillor Perks and then Councillor Aviott.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a more sort of a general question about some of the work that you actually do. I was very interested in the Wales Illegal Money Lending Unit, and I just wondered what sort of is the level of illegal money lending in the Vale, and are there any particular sort of parts of the population that are more vulnerable to this, and especially around scams as well? If what sort of that level is in the Vale, if you answer that for me, please.
Yeah, sure. So that illegal money lending unit operates across all of Wales. It's been there since 2007 and became a part of the SRS in 2015. We saw a lot of activity in the 2012-2017 period. Things have gone a little quiet, but we believe now that things are going to get busy again as a consequence of the lockdown. Many people were able to go on furlough, but many people started to borrow money to make ends meet, money that they probably borrowed from the wrong people. So we've got some very good linkages in with the Citizens Advice Bureaus, good linkages with credit unions and the like. And we have a number of cases under investigation at the moment. one of which actually is inside the SRS region, of people who've lent money and are now starting to turn the screw to get that money back. Sorry, my screen is going a little haywire. Am I still being received?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine now, Dave. It's stopped sharing now. It's working well. Thank you.
So the screen, the activities of that unit are becoming quite busy now, Councillor. The consequences of the coronavirus, I think we'll see in that unit over the next 12 to 18 months. But it's getting people to come forward and say, I'm in trouble. Yes. It's quite challenging. And so we try to work a lot with voluntary organisations, even people like home helps, carers, people like that, to try and get the intelligence so that we can make the interceptions. It's like people who go to loan sharks are in that very hard to reach group, not just hard to reach, very hard to reach. And yes. It's not something they talk about. It's something that they bury. It's a great shame. And then the loan sharks start to manipulate them. And if you want, I mean, I can provide you some case studies that don't make for good reading, where they've exerted some real coercion over families and have forced some of the younger females to do things that really shouldn't happen.
I think it would be interesting to sort of know sort of the cases that are.
Yeah, you read it and you'd feel grubby, you'd feel you'd want to go back.
But unfortunately, this is can be reality, nice, can't it, for people, that they're living under, they've lent money off the illegal money lenders, and the issues that they have around that, the repayment levels and the interest rates and their charge and stuff. So, yeah, I'd be interested to hear more about sort of the work that's done around that. Yes, thank you for your answer.
And loan sharks choose their victims carefully. They choose the people they know they can manipulate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Aviat, and then Councillor Nugent-Finn.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Dave, this is a bit of a historical comment and question, actually. I've had personal experience of this, and I'd like to let committee know one of the other aspects of SRS work. It's to do with the coloured contact lenses. They're just for cosmetic purposes. And I think it's about 6 years ago they were banned. And I used to wear them, no problem. Customers used to wear them, no problem. But it only takes one person to have a problem. And I was just wondering, they're completely banned. People come in the shop where I work, and obviously we're not allowed. But you can still get them online. Now, has SRS got any control over that?
So if we make purchases and they're delivered into the Barry, Cardiff, Bridgend area, then yes, we can challenge the online retailer as long as they're anywhere in England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. But if these things have come direct from the continent, from China, from America, then no. I mean, the issues you flag are pertinent, because these things were being supplied very poor quality, no instructions, to people who were intent on going out and having a good time on Halloween or whatever, and ended up in the opticians and in worse cases in hospital. So we've got some good work going on with opticians the year before last, to flag with us how many people came in and reported eye problems. And in the SRS region, there were over 100 people went to an optician the following week after Halloween to say, I've got a problem with my eye, and it was down to the lenses, poor quality, and had damaged the surface of the eye.
Can I just say that the companies were pressurising the retailers, say there's nothing wrong with them, they're fine and everything, but in my experience, the people we found out had problems. They had too much to drink and went to sleep with them in an eye. Yeah. But we can't sell them anymore. But as I say, you can't. If somebody wants to buy them online, an individual, SRS has got no control.
Well, only if the purchase is made and supplied to a Vale of Glamorgan resident If it's come from anywhere in the UK, we will go after them.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. I have to admit, I had no idea that coloured contact lenses were illegal in the UK. I bought some online a couple of years ago. So
they should be prescribed by an optician.
Yeah.
Someone registered with the Opticians Council. And that's been the problem, is they've been sold quite cheaply in poor establishments.
But the opticians don't do all the really jazzy ones, robot ones and stuff like that. People, which only last for a few hours. I mean, you know, when you put them in, you know, after 3 hours, your eye doesn't want them. It doesn't want them, you know, and you know they're not supposed to be there anyway. You know, it should have only been like 1 or 2 hours, but I think people didn't really understand that. But the opticians, that's the attraction. The opticians don't do any fantastic ones. But I am concerned because people still come in shops and they ask for them and they get them online and they'll come from anywhere. And I'm just wondering how much control SRS have over that.
Yeah, well, I know we did a good job, Councillor Aviat, because the BBC wanted to do a piece on it 2 years ago and complained they couldn't buy any in the SRS area and they had to go elsewhere to buy them. So our retailers had taken the advice on board and had done what we'd asked them to.
In fact, your team came into the shop every Halloween. I would say, we're not allowed to sell them anymore. You know, so you're doing a good job.
Yeah, you guys are. As I said, I had no idea that apart from the prescribed ones, that they were illegal. And I actually bought a set from a large online retailer. I think we all know the one. And they were delivered to my house. I can't remember where I bought them from, but they were red ones I bought for a Halloween costume. I think I had a very lucky escape because trying to put one in, I completely freaked out trying to put it near my eye and they never went in. But I won't be making that mistake again, now I know. So thank you for letting, I've learned something today. Okay, Councillor Brooks, your hand is still up. Is that legacy or do you have something else to say?
No, sorry, Chair, I'll take it down now.
No worries. Councillor Nugent-Finn, your hand was up and then it went down. Are you still wanting to speak?
I am, please, Chair.
Okay, if you'd like to come in now.
Thank you very much, Chair. Dave, good evening. I'm just wondering, in the presentation you said that you're working sort of in a mobile fashion now. I'm just wondering, could you give me an idea of locations so I can direct residents or even attend myself?
So we still have a presence in the civic offices.
Yeah.
We have a presence in 2 locations in Bridgend.
Yeah.
And a presence in the County Hall and the City Hall in Cardiff. We have a Twitter. I don't profess to know a great deal about Twitter, Councillor, but we have an access in website and we have an SRS Facebook page as well. There is the call centre that we operate that Tony fronts for us. It's part of the C1V, but the SRS has its own dedicated telephone number and Tony answers those calls for us. And I encourage my team that every email they send, they put their mobile phone on as well. So we're trying to be as open and as accessible as possible. But walk-ins in the Vale of Glamorgan, civic offices is probably the best way there.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Unless anybody else has any other queries, I think that is okay. I've just received a message from Councillor Cave, no worries. I think that is it. I think we should move and note the business plan. Everybody happy with that?
Chair, could I come back in and just say that the actual plan now will go to the SRS Joint Committee on the 22nd of June. The Vale of Glamorgan is represented by Councillor Williams as the Cabinet Member and Councillor John Thomas, who is the Licensing and Public Protection Chair. So if there are any issues that members wanted to raise either formally back through this committee or with John or Eddie, we could pick those up on the 22nd.
Okay, thank you. I saw a few people nodding when I asked if they were happy with moving and noting, so I think we shall run ahead to the next item. So thank you very much, Dave, for coming. You don't have to stick around now if you don't want to. But the next item now is the update on the task and finish group for housing and homelessness provision within the Vale of Glamorgan, and I believe Mark is going to be leading on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, this is just a quick update on the progress currently being made by the Task and Finish group, which was recently set up around the area of housing and homelessness provision within the Vale of Glamorgan. The report just asked the committee to consider the progress made so far. It gives a little bit around the background concerning the setting up of the group. And then in terms of key issues for consideration, we look first of all at the initial meeting held on the 20th of April, where we basically dealt with housekeeping and admin matters, such as obviously appointment of chair and vice chair, but we also looked at the crucial area of the scope and timetable of the review. And it was agreed at that meeting that we needed to focus on some of the more current or immediate priorities faced with housing and homelessness provision, such as around the areas of allocation of housing, legislation and finance, as these areas could potentially be impacted by events such as when we come up to the 10th of September 2021, when Welsh Government funding for emergency accommodation, such as B&Bs, etc., would officially end. That doesn't mean that the longer term issues and strategies won't be looked at, but obviously they will be put a bit further back, and the main focus will be around the more immediate priorities. In terms of Appendix 1 and 2 of the report, that outlines the amended scope of the review and the amended timetable for the task and finish group meetings. Leading on from that, we had at the next meeting, which was on the 1st of June, a number of items were presented to that group around allocation priorities around housing and homelessness provision, the legal overview of homelessness process and the effects of the pandemic on that process, and the current budgetary situation for housing and homelessness provision. As that was on the 1st of June, obviously I haven't been able to include further details on this report, but those presentations were made, and I think members of the group that are here tonight, and obviously the officers involved, would probably say that it was quite a positive sort of meeting, and I think a lot of things were given to members of the group around the framework and the background of the sort of challenges faced by the council currently around housing and homelessness provision from the legal, financial and obviously housing allocation perspective. That's really just sort of a whistle-stop tour around the sort of where we're at the moment with Task and Finish Group. We've got another meeting coming up in July, where we'll be looking around, I think, the areas around supporting housing more. So that will be looking at the provision of help and support for vulnerable and similar groups and how to aid them around permanent accommodation, and look how to expand temporary more permanent accommodation in the short term. That's what we've currently got proposed on that agenda for meeting 3. So that's it in terms for myself, but obviously if committee have any questions, then I will try to answer as best I can, and obviously if I need to, I'll refer back if I can't answer straight away. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. I haven't got anything to say, but I'm wondering, as Councillor Perks is the chair for that committee, do you have anything else to add?
I suppose the only thing that I would add is that the meeting that we had on the 1st of June was, you know, sort of really helped in laying the foundation of knowledge for us, as to when we move forward now into sort of trying to sort of formulate and get things together. I thought that was really helpful, the 3 different presentations that we had from the various officers, and I think that really helped everyone, that their knowledge level sort of improved, so that we can actually formulate some, sort of going forward, some ideas and things like that to bring back to the scrutiny committee later on.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I will say that meeting on the 1st of June was very informative, and I think it did pave the way. Unfortunately, I couldn't stick around for the whole of it because something happened and I had to run off very, very fast. I won't go into the reasons now, but I did have to run off. But from what I saw in the meeting, it did seem to be leading us on the right path. So does anybody else have anything to add? Councillor Aviott.
Thank you, Chair. I've seen on social media lately, but all the flats the council are building, and it seems like there's people think once they've got their own house, or they've got a roof over their head, that nobody else deserves one. I'm just wondering how we can not allay, but how can we just say that, put it out there that people do need housing? They just think we're doing it. They just think the council and the housing associations are doing it for the fun of it. They don't think that people really need housing. I'm just wondering, this committee, I mean, we all want housing for people. I'm just wondering how we can kind of counteract that. And it's not always it's housing associations as well. I'm just wondering if you all feel like me, that everybody deserves a roof over their head, and it's not because we want to clutter up Barry. Just wondering if anyone's got any ideas how we can put it out there that people need to have a house.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. I think we do try and challenge, obviously, a public perception and a stigma associated with social housing, particularly. But, I have noticed, obviously, in terms of social media, generally, development, whether it be social housing or whether it be private housing, it is a contentious issue, and always has been. I think in terms of that challenge, we would always challenge that. We have plenty of evidence, clearly, in terms of the need. Our housing market assessment, our published assessment, is showing, obviously, 900 plus people in need at the moment on an annual basis in terms of housing. We know we've got nearly 6,000 people on the council's Homes for You scheme registered for accommodation. We also know we've talked in the past about those individuals that during the pandemic we've had responsibility for in placing in temporary accommodation, and part of obviously your remit as a task and finish group will be to look and to challenge us in terms of how we're going to be providing accommodation past that temporary accommodation. And I think we also have to keep our eye on the fact that at the moment, there is the 6-month notices, and also the obviously the moratorium on evictions. That at some stage, as we come out of the pandemic, I'm sure will change. It is changing in England and has changed in England now. I think they've removed the moratorium on evictions in England, and our concern is obviously the impact that's going to have, particularly for those families in private rented accommodation. So the need and the demand is only going to increase. One of the things that we can do and we can look to do, we will be publishing, or there will be a report going to Cabinet shortly on the local housing strategy. That will probably go, I anticipate, before recess, so probably July. And that, I suppose, will be our published strategy in terms of our housing situation in the Vale. And we'll do some work with, I'll do some work with comms in relation to how we sort of perhaps drip feed the priorities and the objectives that are within our housing strategy. As you say, a lot of people are picking up messages on social media which aren't correct. People, it's that misinformation, and it's not helpful. And we should challenge that as far as possible. But as I say, I can do some work with our comms team in terms of ensuring that the messages that are coming from the council and from partners and statutory agencies is the message that we want to get out. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add or ask? No? Okay, well, I suggest we move and note this update. Is everybody happy for that? If you are, please nod or raise your hand. That's for agreement. Thank you. So I think all that is left for me to say is thank you all very much for coming. And just to remind you that the next meeting of this committee is scheduled for Wednesday, the 7th of July at 6 p.m.
Chair, before everyone leaves, I've been asked to just provide a verbal reminder to members around the call-in and request for consideration process.
You did say, sorry, I forgot.
No, sorry, just before obviously everyone leaves. Just a quick reminder to members of the process around call-ins and requests for consideration. Just obviously I know members are aware of it, but it's just to give them a bit of a reminder around the process, just to clarify things. Starting with call-ins, the call-in process is a process which is used by the Vale of Glamorgan councillor to ask for relevant scrutiny committee to review a decision made by Cabinet, providing that the decision is not subject to implementation of urgent decision procedure, if the decision is required to be ratified by full council, or if the matter has already been referred by Cabinet to a scrutiny committee for consideration. When a decision is made by Cabinet, the decision in the form of meeting minutes will be published on the council's website. This marks the starting point of the call-in period, when councillors have 5 working days, not including the publication dates, to complete a call-in request form. If a call-in request received during the call-in period, then it must be accepted by the relevant scrutiny committee chair, as a relevant scrutiny committee will have the opportunity to discuss and evaluate the merits of the decision. The relevant scrutiny committee then must meet within 20 working days of receipt of the call-in request, not counting our recess period, which is usually the month of August. Unless there's extenuating circumstances, the relevant Cabinet member would normally be expected to attend the scrutiny committee when a call-in is being considered. It is accepted, however, that officers are sometimes better placed to present greater detailed information that lead up to the decision, and if this is deemed to be acceptable, then obviously they can attend, although it should always be the decision maker that is ultimately held to account by the committee. Just as a caveat, members of the public are not able to call in a Cabinet decision, only a Vale of Glamorgan councillor. Therefore, the call-in request forms are only available on the MemberNet section of StaffNet, which is the council's intranet account or intranet system. I can share details and links to members on this if they wish. It can also be found on section 7.24, which is pages 50 to 52 of the council constitution. Just to finalise, around requests for consideration, under section 62 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011, the council is required to enable all persons who live or work within the Vale of Glamorgan area to bring to the attention of the relevant scrutiny committee their views on any matter under consideration by the committee. A scrutiny committee must also take into account any views brought to its attention by the member of the public. Therefore, any individual Vale of Glamorgan councillor can ask for a specific issue or topic to be considered by the relevant scrutiny committee by completing a request for consideration form that can be found on MemberNet. Members of the public are also able to engage with this process and can access the form on the Vale website on the public side of it. Please note that such requests must be forwarded to the Democratic Services team, who will share the request with the appropriate directors required to prepare a report for consideration by the relevant scrutiny committees. A copy of this request will also be forwarded to the relevant scrutiny chair, such as yourself, Councillor Collins, for information. Again, I can share the details and links with members on this, and again can be found on the Constitution on page 12. That's section 3.3.1. That's just a quick update for members around that process. But if members have got questions, feel free to ask now or to contact myself, and I can forward any relevant links or forms. Thanks for your time, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. I think I may speak for all of us when I ask if you could send those links and information out to everybody on this committee. I am never ever going to remember which page numbers and section numbers they are. So.
Not a problem, Chair. We just asked to give a sort of verbal reminder, but obviously we'll back that up by sending out any relevant documentation and links. But it's just to give a bit of context and background to members, and obviously just, you know, highlight any issues in their head about the question, about the differences between those processes as well.
Thank you. Thank you. If nobody else has anything else to say, then I've already reminded you of the date of the next meeting, but I will say it again. It's Wednesday, the 7th of July at 6 p.m. And I want to thank you all for coming. It's been a nice quick meeting tonight. So you go, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
Bye.